Welcome. This is a deep dive explainer from the religious studies arm of Energy and Personal Excellence LLC. Today, we are going to explore three of the most profound words you'll find in the Sanatana Dharma tradition: Satyam, Shivam, and Sundaram. Now that's truth, auspiciousness, and beauty. And as we're about to see, this isn't just some abstract philosophical concept. It's a living, breathing map to liberation.
And right up front, we want to acknowledge that the wisdom we're about to unpack here is based on a discourse by Sachin J. Karnik. He actually conducts a daily online satsang, and everyone is welcome to join. You know, this sharing of knowledge is seen as a sacred offering, a jnana yagya, and it's in that spirit that we invite you to explore this with us.
All right, so here's our roadmap for this journey. We're going to kick things off by defining truth itself. Then we'll pinpoint the core obstacle that keeps us from seeing it. From there, we'll dive into the practice that helps untie this knot, discover what might be the most accessible gateway to the divine, and then finally, we'll pull it all together into a complete path to freedom.
So let's begin with that first pillar, Satyam. Before we can even begin to talk about beauty or auspiciousness, we absolutely have to get crystal clear on what truth really means. Because, let's be honest, without that solid foundation, the rest of the path just kind of stays theoretical.
Satyam is not somebody's interpretation. It's not just a perspective or an opinion. It is reality itself, that which is, no matter what you or I might think or feel about it. It is, by its very nature, immutable and factual. It's the bedrock of all existence.
Now, this is where things get really fascinating, because we have to make a crucial distinction. On the one hand, you've got Vyavaharika Satyam, or relative truth. A good example is your body's biology, your blood pressure, your DNA. These are facts, for sure, but they're facts within the changing world of material nature, or prakriti. They're conditional. But on the other hand, you have Paramarthika Satyam, the absolute truth. This is Brahman, the ultimate, unchanging, eternal, and unconditional reality. You see, all of our knowledge of each other, of the world, it's just fragments. We're always looking through the lens of our own mind, our own history, our own biases. The image you have of another person isn't actually them. It's a distorted picture you're holding inside your own head. There's only one being who is Sarvagna, or all-knowing, who sees the absolute, complete truth of every single thought and feeling, and that is the inner witness, Bhagavan. Okay, so if our perception is inherently flawed and limited, then what's the fundamental blockage inside of us? What's preventing us from seeing that absolute reality, that Paramarthika Satyam? Well, the tradition identifies a very specific obstacle, and it calls it a knot. So to really get what this knot is all about, we have to look at its three components. First, you have aham. That's that persistent sense of I, the ego. Then there's the jiva, which is the individual self that feels like it's living in a body and experiencing the world. And finally, you have the granthi, which literally means a knot, a bind. And when you put those three pieces together, you get the aham jiva granthi. And folks, this is the big one. This is the central problem of our spiritual lives. It's this deep-seated, usually unconscious, belief that our true self is the same thing as our temporary body, our fleeting thoughts, and our personal story. This fundamental mistake is what creates the whole illusion of separation, of limitation, and ultimately, of suffering. So we've identified the knot. The obvious next question is, great, how do we untie it? And this isn't just some intellectual puzzle you can think your way out of. No way. It requires a dedicated practice, a path of revelation known as Upāsanā. Upāsanā is the active, disciplined process of drawing near to the divine. It's this heartfelt, contemplative practice where you connect with your Ishtadevata, your own chosen form of God. And it stands on four pillars: Shraddha, which is faith; Bhakti, which is devotion; the sacred sound of mantra; and the wisdom of Shastra, or scripture. It is through this dedicated practice that our inner world, all the stuff going on in our minds, starts to become incredibly clear. But here's the catch. Even with the perfect practice, the ego is tricky. As Mahant Swami Maharaj teaches, two huge roadblocks can pop up. The first one is that feeling of boredom, that thought that, this is repetitive, I already know this. But the second one is maybe even more dangerous. It's that feeling of intellectual pride, of thinking, I've heard all this before, I already understand everything. And there is this powerful analogy for it. Think of God as a high-tension inner wire. If you touch it with your bare hands, you connect. You become one with that current. But that feeling of I know it all is like wearing a thick rubber glove of ignorance.
You can go through all the motions, do all the practices, but you will never, ever make true contact. You have to be willing to take the gloves off.
And this really brings us to the real goal line here. The ultimate measure of your progress isn't how many books you've read or how many people praise you. It's not about becoming a great scholar. The true barometer is Akhanda Ananda, an unbroken, unshakable state of bliss and inner peace that is completely, 100% independent of whatever's happening on the outside.
Now, let's be real. The path of untying that ego knot through pure intellectual gymnastics can feel really abstract, really difficult. But thankfully, the tradition gives us a much more direct, a more heart-centered entry point that's accessible to absolutely everyone. And that is the gateway of beauty. But before we can really appreciate beauty, we have to understand Shivam. This is auspiciousness, that sacred vitality that just animates all of life. You can see the distinction between Shiva, which is living consciousness, and Shava, which is the lifeless corpse. So Shivam is that divine life force, that sacred spark that's present in every single thing that lives and breathes. Recognizing this is a huge step on the path. And that leads us to Sundaram, beauty. It is the aspect of the divine we can most directly touch, see, and feel. Think about the incredible color and fragrance of a flower, the sound of a beautiful piece of music, or the form of a sacred image. Beauty has this amazing way of bypassing our over-analytical minds and speaking directly to the heart through our senses.
And this explains perfectly why things like sacred art, rituals, flowers, and adorned murtis are so incredibly important. They're not just decorations. They are powerful technologies of consciousness. They use the very real, tangible power of Sundaram, of beauty, to make the abstract, formalist divine feel real, feel present, and feel totally accessible to our hearts.
Okay, so let's put it all together. How do these three amazing concepts, Satyam Shivam Sundaram, actually combine to form a complete, living path that can take us from where we are right now to a state of total liberation?
It's funny, even though we chant the phrase Satyam Shivam Sundaram, the actual journey for most of us often begins in reverse. We start with Sundaram. We're drawn in by something beautiful. That connection then opens our hearts and lets us start to perceive Shivam, the sacred life force pulsating in everything around us. And it's that deep, heartfelt experience that prepares us and opens us up to the direct realization of Satyam, the absolute truth. And this approach completely transforms the world. A simple instruction like touch a tree is no longer just a physical act. When you do it with devotional feeling, with bhava, it becomes a direct point of contact with the divine. As Bhagavan says, you see the tree, but see me in that tree.
So, at the end of the day, this isn't some philosophy to just be debated over coffee. It is a living progression meant to be experienced. It's a practical path that doesn't promise some reward in an afterlife, but one that culminates in Jivan Mukti, ultimate freedom, realized right here in this very body while you are living. And so, we'll leave you with this question to carry with you. If Sundaram, if beauty, is truly the most accessible doorway, where can you start to consciously look for and connect with the divine in the simple, beautiful moments of your own daily life? Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of Satyam, Shivam, and Sundaram. To continue your journey or to learn more about the daily satsang, please use the contact information provided.